I am Sandra Finley, and I am President and CEO of League of Black Women. What we do at League of Black Women is leadership research and education programs based on that research, and we're specifically looking at how Black women advance against their own ambitions. Now, in taking that on, it means that we don't do a lot of the kind of work that other organizations do, primarily because they do it. So we don't spend a lot of time comparing Black women to white women. We don't spend a lot of time looking at the differences between the gap of Black women's achievement and white women's achievement and that sort of thing. We don't even spend a lot of time looking at Black women's ambitions against what white men do. We look at what Black women say they want to do, and we look at the prospects for them being able to achieve those ambitions. And we're also particularly interested in how far out Black women are willing to go in order to dream about what the potential for their ambitions are likely to be. And that is what we do. And so what I wanted to add to this discussion here was a view that you don't normally have access to. So in order to do that, I'm going to issue, from the authority of me, provisional visas for all of you all who don't think you are Black women to walk with me into Black world. Okay, you got a visa. So you can be here with no apologies, nobody asking you to pat you down and wonder, what are you doing here? You're with me. And for the Black women who are here, this is homecoming for a little while. And for the brothers, well, y'all know where we are along with it. So we're going to spend a little time from this perspective so that we can get to some of the points of interest that might not normally be available to you in discussions that you might have in gatherings of this type. And I also want to thank some of the folk who brought me here, three in particular. I want to thank Robin, because Robin and I met, as she said, at a conference that she was our facilitator for. And she was very kind in that she kind of let me have some time and actually helped me be really good at what I was doing that day. So I want to thank you, Robin. I also want to thank Robert Livingston, who is sitting here, because he helped advance the League of Black Women's leadership research. And he's got a piece of work that's still hanging out there, and we are waiting, like people wait for the great sale at Macy's, for it to be done so we can get the results. I want to thank him very much for that. And then I also want to give a gift, because I think you should appear at the table with more than your knife and fork. And I want to give you Kim Vappy, who is a colleague of the League of Black Women. And my gift to you is some time with Kim, as she is visiting back and forth and assigned by Robin at your various tables, because Kim is the CEO of a company, a great company called Mentium. And so for some of those of you who are trying to figure out how you're going to actually structure the diversity that you seek, you want the expertise of Mentium to help you figure out how to do that. And Kim is that instrument. What I wanted to do was talk to you a little bit about, now that we are in Black woman world together for a little while, a perspective on the experience, and as reflected in the results of our research. In 2011, League of Black Women conducted a research survey that we called Risk and Reward, and it's in your packets. Risk and Reward looked at what the gap might be between a Black woman's experience and her own goals for herself, to help explain some of our, what you call behaviors, particularly corporate experience, where we look at how Black women make a decision to move from one company to the other. What were we seeking? What was it that urged us out? Or what is it that might have made it so that we could have stayed and matured? And so we call that experience looking at the risk and the reward of it. And in getting ready to do that, try to think about it differently, I had to think about my own experience just in the world on any given day. Just getting to you here, flying to Boston, I had the experience that is pretty much getting to be typical for me. On an airplane, I sit and I open up my stuff, and it's heavily branded League of Black Women. So typically, whoever's sitting next to me will go, oh, what is that, League of Black Women? And so I briefly say what we do. And then they always ask me to explain Black women in some way or another. The question comes, I have a friend, or we had someone who worked for us who left, or why don't Black women, or whatever it is. And maybe one of the toughest ones was when somebody asked me on one of those trips to explain the whiteness in my apparent skin. So here's what that looked like. Well, obviously, you must have some white people in your family, because you were like, and she didn't say the word, but she wanted to say light along with it. And so what I want to say to you is on any given day here in Black World or Black Women World, you never are quite sure how the day is going to go. And at any given time, in any different moment, somebody takes something like a psychological stick and feels fully authorized to poke you with it and have you explain yourself or explain your people or whatever it is that they choose to do. You never quite get, okay, it's like being permanently locked in the loop at TSA at the airport where people pat you at any given time. And so we live in this state of kind of unease, a dis-ease, about the disease of not being fully credentialed, authoritative members safely in this society. And with all of that, we still are, I think, quite remarkable people. I want to talk to you a little bit about the findings, the summary of key findings of this report, and then get to the thing I know Robin wants me to do. The summary of the key findings, we looked at risk-taking simply to determine if the return on the investment that we make in this society advancing was worth what it is that we put into it, whether you want to characterize it as joining the feminist movement, buying a house in a community that is particularly upscale, making a decision to come to Harvard, to access the best of whatever we think education might be. And we found out that Black women on their own lack sponsorship for risk-taking at work, for career advancement. And what's interesting about that is we kind of always knew it, but lately we know absolutely what the kiss of death is of not having sponsorship and having invested quite a lot in the advancement of a career that absolutely requires it. So we live in a time where we don't have access to sponsorship, that is, people who will pull you and let go of this illusion of you bootstrapping and lifting yourself by your own bootstraps, but do what sponsorship always does, is pull and protect you along the way, but the assumption is that we're just going to make it happen. But we lack access to sponsorship, and so the likelihood we're able to tell women because of this research is that that trail, that path you want to go, even if you as an individual make it, it's highly unlikely that your daughters will be able to en masse. It's highly unlikely that you'll be able to bring your community to the success that you have achieved, and you will be what Malcolm Gladwell calls the outlier for a very long time. And is that the fate you choose? If not, we have to do some things differently. We found out that Black women were primarily self-motivated to do the things that they do and have the success that they have. And this was particularly problematic because we thought that our strength as strong Black women would make it so being self-motivated, I will do it myself, a good thing. What's wrong with being a strong Black woman? And we found out that other communities would have other parts of their local, their larger community supporting their success. But we were out there being by ourselves and considering trying to make that some sort of normal experience, and it was making us sick and tired and not well. We don't sleep at night, our minds just race, our stomachs hurt, and we have stress, which counts to other things as well. And it's not because we're weak, but it is because we are in this perpetual frontline position that never changes. Even geese that fly in formation change the goose in the front from time to time. They tell me that the Roman soldiers who fought in that particular box kind of conformation had exactly 6 minutes on the front, that you had to hold your shield and thrust like this, doing the exact same thing that the Roman to the left and the right of you did. And at the end of 6 minutes, you moved to the side and go to the back, and you weren't up again for maybe another 40 minutes. But Black women stay on the front line, self-motivated, self-propelled, to try to make it happen. Not because we don't choose to shift to the second position, but because there is no backup for us. We looked at something called weaker and less strategic networks. We found out that Black women lack access to powerful and trusted advisors who can provide strategic and informed counsel on how to evaluate the risk and opportunity. And that's been talked about earlier today, so I won't spend much more time on it, except to say you know it's really important. Let me tell you that we were now interested, after we got this information, in understanding why this set of circumstances keeps happening and happening and happening, generation after generation, yet we keep getting asked to this particular dance. We heard earlier today, Paula talked about, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, the same invitation to black women. Come, let's march together for more rights for women. And so we do. I do it this way. Remember, you're with me now. So we march side by side, arms linked, sister to sister, marching for the rights for improvement, whether it's voting or health care, you name it, whatever it might be, we all gather, we are called to the rally, and we march, just like that. And we march to the door of power, and we knock on that door, all of us together, bam, 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 let us in. We want change. And power opens the door. And power opens the door and looks at us and says, all right, we know there's got to be some change. Send someone in, and we'll sit down and talk about it. But then what power does, instead of letting us choose who we send in or how we send in, power chooses who. It invites in. And it always invites my sister, not my sister. My sister is invited, not my sister. But my sister says, don't worry, we've been marching together, I got this. I got this, don't worry about it. And she goes in, and she sits at the table, and power starts to negotiate. And it says, look, I get it. There's going to have to be change, and there's going to be change. In fact, I'm going to offer you this, and this, and that for change. But we can't handle a race thing right now. And there my sister sees, closer than she's ever seen before, these core elements of whatever the campaign is about. And it's right there in her hand. She can feel it, taste it, smell it. But that race thing. And then she makes a calculated decision, and she takes the deal. And she comes out, and she tells all of us, including me, and you too, we got this, and this, but we didn't get that race thing. But don't you worry, we're going to come back for that. And what we now know is no one ever comes back. That's not what movements do. They go forward. They never go back. What they don't settle in the campaign forward never gets settled until the next campaign for that particular issue, if that happens. And sometimes it never does. And so the League of Black Women looks at this behaving, and we look at the loop. It keeps happening for Elizabeth. It happens again over the ages and even in modern times. And we wonder, what happened? Did my sister punk at the table? And then we afforded our opportunities to play the tape over and over and over again to see what you don't normally see. And we found out something that's of use to you right now if you are thinking about inventing the world again. That my sister did not punk at the table, that the trap wasn't sprung at the table. The trap was sprung at the door. When she came into the room alone to represent all of us, the rest of it was a fait accompli. I want you to let that sit with you a little bit. For all of you who are sitting on committees representing all the women, heads of departments, dean of this and head of that, representing the interest of all of the women because your heart is right, thinking about what you're going to do about diversity, you have to consider, if you sit at that table by yourself, presuming to represent my needs and my interests, trap is already sprung. It cannot and will not get done. And you will have to come out and tell me about your disappointment of my situation again and again and again. So, League of Black Women asked the question, what to be done about this? We need to give better advice to our sisters and to our sisters about this invitation to this particular dance over and over again. And we have determined for action and change, this ought to be our response when power makes that invitation again. It will make the invitation over and over again to sister. It will invite Gloria Steinem and not Angela Davis. It will do that. But what Gloria must say, what sister must say at that invitation is not without my sister. You don't go in there alone. You don't let power divide you. There is nothing good that will come of it that will be of the benefit that we all sought if you do that. So we wanted you to know about where the trap is sprung. So that you say, not without my sister. That's what you must say. And to my sisters going in, we have to say that we require that our sisters carry their share of the weight of what the movement must ultimately and fully be evolved into in order to be the use that we want it to be going forward. It means that they can't just get so far and determine, we've gone far enough, it's getting difficult now. What we should do is be kind of good with what we've got and then come back another time when times are better. We must tell sister that when she sits, she becomes part of the weight. And so we have to keep her on her feet and moving forward and challenge her to do that sort of thing. There's a poem called And Still I Rise. And it's, for those of you who have heard it, it is a series of challenges. And then the narrator says, even in the face of those things, and still I rise. So we have to, as sisters, tell our sisters, when she sits down, she's in the middle of a poem called And Still I Sit. She got to get up and keep going for the world that she says that she wants and the life that she says that she wants to be a part of. She must keep going so that we go together through this whole thing. I want to say in my last few minutes something about the language that we use to describe our ambitions and our goal. We're talking about bridge building here, but we need to be very careful as to where we think those bridges are going to be built towards and to. Some of these bridges don't need to be built. We don't need to build a bridge to something called a post-racial society, because the tax that we have to pay to be members of that is more than we want to bear. There is a difference between race and racist, and we must be careful to use the right terms for the right situation. We don't need to be post-raced. It's a beautiful thing. My race, yours. But racist behavior is something that we don't want amongst us. We have to tax it first and then get rid of it. We also want to get rid of some caricatures so we don't ever have to face them again and again and again each generation. I want to have a great funeral here in Black World and invite all of you to come. It's going to be big. It's going to be New Orleans style. We're going to dig some holes deep in the ground, and we're going to bury some caricatures. We're going to bury Nice Lady 6 feet deep. Nice Lady lies here. She's dead. We no longer have to be concerned about her behavior. She didn't live anymore. We don't have to be mimicking her behaviors or anything like that. We're going to bury Angry Black Woman, 14, 15 feet deep. All right? She never lived. We don't have to be concerned about her anymore. We're going to the list goes on of who's going to be at this funeral that we bury. But once we bury, we won't have any grieving or anything like that, because we have to remember she never was us anyway. She was invented. And when she brings herself on into the room to confuse us and to stress us out and get us all suspicious of each other, we have to remember, didn't she die? And if she has not the good grace to die, ladies, let us kill her. Malcolm Gladwell's new book called David and Goliath, first chapter tells the story of the David and Goliath that we all like and know. And then he says, if we understand David and Goliath the way that the story normally goes, then we don't understand anything about what really went down between David and Goliath. He simply says, we like the story of David and Goliath because we relate to David because he was the underdog. And we like the story of a good underdog, don't we? Rise against all. But he says David never was the underdog because David was artillery and Goliath was infantry. And artillery always, always beats infantry. So the other myth that we have to bury is that we are the underdogs. We are not. We are like David. We are agile. We are unexpected. And we have unique firepower. He also tells us that there's a part of the story that's rarely told that finishes off the story. And that is after Goliath falls down from David's rock, David jumps on his chest, takes his knife out, and cuts his head off. Make sure he's good and dead. And I want for us to improve our end games so that when we make campaigns and we make for improvement and we give everything that we've got to it, that we remember to cut his head off so that it doesn't rise and come back and bother another generation of our sisters and our sisters. I hope you've enjoyed your visit into Black World. Your visas will expire at the end of the day. And for the sisters who came home, come home more often. It feels good in here. Thank you.